This episode of the NFT Stories podcast is supported by Own Every Word, a comedy NFT project minting every word as a one-of-one NFT with a hilarious definition, where the words can then be used on game shows for more NFT prizes. I'm a partner in this project. I'm really proud of it. So to learn more, go to owneveryword.com. And as always, this is not financial advice, so only buy in if you dig it. Hi, I'm Phil Ranta, the host of NFT Stories podcast. Every week we tell another story from this multi-billion-dollar market alongside the artists, collectors, companies, and entrepreneurs that are making it all happen. This episode is going to be a bit different. I had the honor of speaking to Mack Flavelle, co-founder of the first explosively popular NFT project CryptoKitties. He worked on Top Shot and worked on Stoner Cats. Unlike our regular episodes that are edited, sans a few pops and clicks, you're going to hear our full chat from Mack's side on how the modern-day NFT industry was born through his work today with Bighead Club. Warning, Mack is an exceptionally charming speaker, but he does casually swear, and for the first time on this podcast, you'll hear me swear as well. If that offends you, please skip to the next episode. So here he is, in his own words, the Kitties part of CryptoKitties, Mack Flavelle. Mack Flavelle, thank you so much for joining the NFT Stories podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, the past 10 years, I think to say the least, have been quite a ride for you. You were a VP of biz dev at Tapstream. You were a marketing guy. You were a product and partnerships guy. And now people are calling you the godfather of NFTs. There's a lot of names on a lot of websites for you. Were you always a product and partnerships guy?
No. I spent more time and had more jobs like flipping burgers, doing minimum wage shit than anything else.
Sure.
I've been fired from more minimum wage jobs than anybody else has had in their life. Like dozens of those motherfuckers. And then I really like making games a lot. I really like games. And so I spent a long time thinking of myself just as a game designer. But I guess I talk pretty too. So sometimes they let me sell things. I worked at an oil change, though, to be clear, and had the worst sales 9 out of the 10 months of the whole team on the floor. But I can also convince the NBA to put LeBron James on the blockchain, you know?
Well, there we go. So you can talk pretty, but when it comes to blockchain stuff, maybe not so much in terms of like, hey, I checked your oil and you need a new oil filter too, so buy this on top of that.
That's exactly right. But I was really impressed watching some of my peers that oil change. There's this one dude named Steve, and Steve, not to be mean, but Steve was not a pretty man. Steve was conventionally unattractive. And Steve was the best salesperson I have ever met in my life. To the point where after I tried to sell them the fucking air filter, as you know, they'd be first they'd say no, and then they'd get mad because they just didn't like my approach. Steve would go in and get them to say yes after I had turned them from a 0 to a -10. It was crazy. Steve was also an asshole for what it's worth. But
well, you kind of have to be a little bit, right? If you're trying to sell people air filters when you know they just came in from an oil change, you can't be shameless, right?
That may be part of it. Yep.
So you went from that to somehow you went from oil change, flipping burgers, and getting fired. You did make your way into legit technology, though. Was that always because you were a game developer on the side and you worked your way through to kind of work up, or how'd you get into that?
I was working at Future Shop, which was Canada's version of Best Buy, selling cameras, because they used to sell digital cameras before these phones blew up. And I said to my friend, I was like, I just want to make video games. And he was like, why don't you go to video game school? And I was like, oh shit, that's crazy. Actually, before that, man, I never get to tell these parts of the story, but I used to throw rap shows in Vancouver on Monday nights, which is a recipe for failure, I promise you.
Monday night rap shows? That sounds
Monday night live at the Lamplighter. There's one person who will ever hear this podcast who will know what I'm talking about. Luvins and Cass pioneered that shit. Monday night live at the Lamplighter, and I was hosting a battle, and I needed a DJ. And I also needed a job at the time because I didn't have one.
Sure.
But I went to this guy's house, and somebody was like, he's a DJ, you should go meet him. So I went and met him, and I was like, yeah, like I'm doing a rap battle, and we need somebody to, play instrumentals or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And we're hanging out and talking, and I was like, also, what do you like do for a living? I could tell that it was interesting things happening, and it wasn't that interesting. He provided tech support for a like real estate SaaS platform. So if you were a real estate agent, you could pay this company $10 a month or $30 a month and have a sort of cool website with customizable CSS and blah, 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 blah. And I ended up working for him. And that's how I actually got into technology career-wise. But then I quit that shit, went to Future Shop, which is the Best Buy thing, and then went and did the video games. Then I went and worked at EA. And then after working at EA for 6 months as a junior producer or whatever, like a little midget guy, they said, oh no, my mentor said to me, you should quit your job and come work for me.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, that's really exciting. He worked at home. He was an independent game designer and consultant, and it was like really interesting. And I went and worked for him. And 3 months later, he fired me. And then I was an asshole who'd been a junior game designer at EA for 6 months, which is like worse than having not worked there.
Right.
And the day, I'm pretty sure, it starts to blur, but I'm pretty sure the day after he fired me, my wife told me she was pregnant for the first time.
Oh my gosh.
And then the day after that, like not even lying, it was 2008 and the world economy crashed.
Jeez.
And everything went to fuck. It was really, really bad.
Yeah.
And so I spent the summer... Anyhow, I ended up going to school for programming. I went back to school, and I was like, fuck it. I'm going to go learn, because my wife, she's like, I'm so fucking sick of you talking about if you could just convince somebody to build something. Just shut up and learn how to build it.
Sure.
And I was like, you're right. She's usually right. And I was like, you're right. And so I went and did a semester of programming. And then that summer, I ended up almost laundering money for the Russian mob, which is a whole weird tangent. And
I was going to say, can you even go into that, or is somebody still going to knock you off for that?
I will tell you that story after.
Sure.
And then I went back to programming school, and I got there on the first day, and there was like a quiz, and you weren't supposed to know. They just wanted to like see what you knew.
Yeah.
But I remember like aggressively standing up and kind of pushing my chair back and being like, this is fucking dumb. I'm out of here. And I left because I just couldn't do it. I'm not an engineer. I don't have the continuity of thought required, I would argue. And so I went to the marketing department, and I was like, I would really like to be a marketing student. I'm not very good at programming. Please let me be marketing. And they were like, yeah, that's awesome. You seem really nice, and that's really cool. But the deadline was like 2 weeks ago. Like, you objectively can't do this. And I was like, oh, I hear you, but you don't hear me. Like, you have to let me in. Please, please, please. And I begged and I pleaded, and they fucking did. And then I spent a semester marketing. And then while I was doing that, there was like an incubator here in Vancouver before it might have even been before Y Combinator. It was sure as shit before incubators were everywhere. Like, this was a very unusual thing. And I met those people, and I was like, oh man, like, they will give you money. They will invest in your business.
Right.
If you can like do a startup. I fucking hate the word do a startup, not build a business. But that was the language used at the time.
Sure.
And so I spent like a number of months trying to convince them that I wasn't fucking useless. And the thing was, I was useless. Like, couldn't I just didn't know how to do anything that was relevant to a startup. But I just I started helping them organize their events. That was one place where I was like, oh yeah, no, I can like, well, help organize events.
Yeah, the rap show history, right?
Rap show history, right? Yeah, no, totally, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so I spent 6 months doing that, and then they did their next cohort, and I found a technical co-founder who was an awesome guy named Ben through a co-founder speed dating that I probably helped organize through them, actually. But I met Ben, and then we went to them, And we finally had I had somebody who could build something. We had something that resembled a vision, and I had proven that I could at least do what I said I could do. It didn't say I could do much, but I could at least do what I said I would do.
Mm-hmm.
And we started a company called Compass Engine. And then we fucked that one up. And that was how I actually got into this fucking ridiculous world.
There we go. Well, that's quite a journey. But it sounds like through all those failures, you at least kind of picked up, if this was a role-playing game, then you picked up little traits along the way that would all feed into this, I would say, renegade attitude you need to have in order for you to say, you know what, the blockchain's a thing. That's something that exists. Why don't we put interactive cats on there you can breed and people can buy on ETH? So how did that, first of all, when did the blockchain get on your radar? When's the first time you remember hearing about it?
The actual first time, maybe I heard like the word Bitcoin or something, but it was honestly probably like the launch of Ethereum, because a guy named Bernd, who's another mentor of mine, I really believe in like finding people to look up to.
Yeah.
And staying in touch with those people. And I'm very sad by the number of people I meet who are like, "Oh, I'm too old to have a mentor." And I'm like, "Oh, you mean you're fucking dying? Like, what does that mean? I'm too old to have a mentor?" The amount of ego or sadness tied into that statement, I find disheartening.
Sure.
But very smart guy named Baron Batak, love him to death. He's amazing, and he told me, I remember because I didn't understand it all. Like, I didn't understand blockchains. I sure as shit didn't understand Ethereum. I didn't understand wallets. It's too bad because he got me curious. And so at the time, I was like, all right, I'm going to go buy some of this Ethereum. And I didn't. And if I had, like, we would have had a very
I had the same
journey.
thing. When I was in 2012, somebody told me about Bitcoin, and I got to the screen where you had to put in your social security number, and I went, this feels like a scam, and I left.
Yeah, I don't think MetaMask was around at the time. Like, Consensus probably wasn't even around. But whatever the sort of wallets that you were supposed to use, I wasn't able to figure out. I'm honestly not that good at computers. And so I didn't. But then, so while I was at Tapstream, it's funny that you found that. Tapstream is run by Ben and Slavin. They rule. And they eventually, they kind of fired me. Not directly,
it seems
but
to be a theme.
Yeah, no, it totally is, and that's fine. That one's funny because they said to me when I worked there, they were like, "We need to hire a salesperson." I'm like, "Yeah, for sure." So we called this guy named Michael Zigman, and he was the shit. And we hired him as a junior sales guy. And like 3 months later, Ben and Slavin were like, "You know what? We've been running this business. We haven't taken a salary in 2 years. We need to go make some money for ourselves. Like, we have to stop funding this out of pocket. And so we need a new CEO. And it's not you, Mac. It's Mike." And I was like, yeah, I get it, actually. That makes sense to me. And so they made him my boss, which was totally fine. Him and me are like, well, and then like 3 months later, he had to fire me. And that totally sucked for him. Didn't suck that much for me.
I can imagine.
It sucked a lot for him. But we're still friends to this day. Like, I hang out with him once a month, and we go, well, he doesn't drink beer. But I go drink beer, and we talk about his motorcycle and shit. He's awesome.
Sure.
But while I was there, I got really excited about VR. And so I started a newsletter about VR called Hammer and Tusk. Because in Alice in Wonderland, the oysters that get drawn out of the ocean are drawn out by the walrus and the carpenter. And the tools of the walrus and the carpenter are the hammer and the tusk.
Nice.
So I was like, we're going to capture the minds of children with VR. Therefore, we should call this the Hammer and Tusk. Ignoring the fact that the walrus and the carpenter actually fucking eat the oysters. Yeah, I built that out a little bit, and it was like almost something. And then I called a very old friend of mine named Roham, and I was like, dude, I want to come work at your crazy ass business that nobody fucking understands. And after putting me through the ringer, they eventually gave me a job. Spent a couple years at Axiom Zen trying to invent meaningful consumer applications, ephemeral messaging, games, emoji translators, emoji language learners, emoji browsers, sticker apps, all sorts of shit, like dozens and dozens of apps we made, location-based games. None of them fucking worked. And then in the summer of 2017, he was like, how do you feel about the blockchain? And I said, the blockchain fucking sucks. It's for losers who hate the banks and hate the governments.
Yep.
And they're all suck. And he was like, well, it's cute that you have an opinion, but your new job is to make the blockchain fun.
Wow.
And I was like,
Okay.
no. And he was like, yes. And I was like, okay. So then I was like, let's make cats fuck.
There we go. So you had this kind of successful roadmap thrust upon you, right? Like this is like somebody saying, "Hey, we're Google. We just bought this little thing called YouTube. This is your project." And you go, "No, this sucks." And then they're like, "Well, you're doing it," and then it becomes YouTube.
It's like, you can do it or you can leave. Like, oh. And Roham hates it when I tell that story that way. He was never shitty like that. Like, he's never. It just makes a better story when more arbitrary. But no, he was like, we think this is a really big idea. We think this is really important. We want to put a lot of resources into this, and you have got a mind that will bring a fresh perspective to this set of problems. So I would very much like you to apply your mind to that set of problems. And then I tell the story a lot, but I went into the woods, metaphorically, possibly literally, and I came back with 3 truths. One was, I'd always wanted to build a gardening game. Like with flowers and birds, and you didn't know what color flowers you'd get or what birds would come, and you're collecting bird songs, but it all depended on planting the seed and then unknown outcomes. Outcomes was really interesting, and that's like at the core of what made CryptoKitties interesting. And 2, I just think that cats are opt out, not opt in for the internet. Like outside of porn, cat gets more video consumption than anything online. It always has. Cats are the most popular thing on YouTube, blah, blah, blah. Especially before fucking influencers.
Sure.
And 3rd, I'd seen CryptoPunks. And it was the first time where I was like, oh, like I never bought no Bitcoin. I never bought no Ethereum. I never figured out how to go through the KYC of it all or any of it, all that bullshit. But when I seen a Wonder Woman looking CryptoPunk, I was like, okay, I will totally give you $35 for that.
Sure.
And so I did. And then I went back to work and I was like, listen, cats and genetic game and CryptoPunks, let's make cats fuck to mine Bitcoin. And Dieter, who I worked with, was like, that doesn't actually make any sense. You're just making shit up. But there's a different thing than Bitcoin called Ethereum. And I could create a new standard for Ethereum. I could make a proposal and run it through the community and vet it and get it improved because, standing on the shoulders of giants.
Sure.
And he said, if we do that, then you can do cat fucking. And so we did. I tell people I'm the crypto part of CryptoKitties. No, I'm the kitty part. I'm not the crypto part.
There we go.
And also, I was the problem that led to the 721 standard. I was not the solution. I ain't nearly smart enough to figure that shit out. But I could be like, we should make cats fuck.
You are self-professed not good at computers, yet I found an interview with you online at AMA from 2017 where you were already talking about smart contracts. You're already talking about governance. You were using all of these terms that everybody's an expert in now, but nobody had heard of by the end of 2019, right? So was this something that you had to just absorb because all of these people around you were like, Mac, you've got to learn this. You run this game now? Or was it like a slow roll to become an expert in these things?
I'm pretty slow. Dieter's a very smart dude and also good at explaining things, to be honest. Like one of Dieter's strengths is that he really understands a lot of complex technical things, but he also understands the mind of the muggle. He ain't one, but he mostly gets it. And so, I really I would say Dieter taught me a ton. There's a bunch of other very smart people who worked on CryptoKitties and worked on 721 Standard and blah, blah, blah. But I was spending a lot of time with Dieter, and he was very patient in helping me get there.
That's great. So when did you know that this thing was actually working? Because I've been around for game launches more than once, and generally day one, you're like, it's never what you want on day one unless you have $100 million marketing budget, right? Day 2, you might see a little bit of an upward trajectory or downward. You're kind of like, every person is precious, right? Every crash report is precious. When did you have that moment where you're like, oh my God, people are actually making these cats fuck?
So there was a couple. We went to ETH Waterloo, which was like a conference for Ethereum. And Vitalik was there. And the reason we went is because we knew everybody would be there. It was the only place on earth where you could physically gather everybody involved with Ethereum, or a bunch of people. Yeah. And so 4 people went there. Jordan. Oh, shit. I forgot Jordan last time I told the story. Jordan, who was like a third year like university computer engineering student who ended up being a significant contributor to this. Jordan's story should be told. But Jordan and Arthur and Benny and Fabiano all went, and they didn't even have tickets to get in. They just stood out front and begged to be let in, and they eventually got let in. I have no idea how because I wasn't there. And they brought tie-dye shirts and fucking balloons and stickers and just like shenanigans because Benny's like that in the best way. They had a little demo. The site wasn't there yet, and I think there's only 4 cats. And one of the things that made CryptoKitties work was this progressively slower cycle by which you had to wait to see the output of your results. Right. Like the 5th time a cat fucked, it took a day, and the 9th time it took a week or some shit.
Right.
None of that was in place. Like you could just press the button and get instant. Oh, I got a new cat. I got a new cat. I got a new cat. Anyhow, Motherboard, the Vice publication, was there, and they wrote a thing about it. And that was like, who knew? I thought that might be like the peak of it, but it was like, that's cool. That's weird. Look, Mom, I made Vice. And then that was like, I feel like that was like a month before we were supposed to launch. And then in that month, we had a private Telegram group because Discord wasn't really a thing that people were using.
Right.
And that started to get fun and exciting. And it was like, oh, this is what a beta is supposed to be like. I've never successfully had a beta for a software product before. I've participated in them, but I have never run the product with a successful beta. But as we're going through that, it was like, oh yeah, this smells right. Like there's people every day who are asking how we're doing and if we're on schedule and what's exciting. And then the day before we launched, there was a dude who said, this feels like Christmas. I haven't been this excited since I was a child.
Wow.
Well, that's fucked up. Yeah.
Yeah, what a terrible childhood. Oh my God.
And all those things came together, and then we launched, and like Ethereum melted. Sold a bunch of very expensive cats, which I would tell people now you're used to because NFTs are NFTs, but at the time nothing like that ever happened. We sold a $30,000 cat, and that was just like fucking nuts.
Right. Yeah. When I remember even at the time, I mean, I was not in, I will never pretend I was into blockchain at that time, but I was into games and I was into technology. So I was reading the reports of it. And I think there was one that sold for what, $180,000 somewhere along the line, something like that. And it was, I was confused and scared by that. I wonder if the team internally was confused and scared once numbers get to that level.
By the time 180 came around, we were used to it. It was the $30,000 one that was like, oh shit.
Right.
Oh no. And to be clear, like this was not a smooth journey. Like Ethereum was melting. The neckbeards were furious. Right. I remember there was some poor fucking guy at MetaMask in customer support who had a baby that weekend. And it was also the weekend where we I sound like an arrogant prick, but we took down Ethereum.
Right.
We weren't trying to. That was not on purpose. That was by mistake. But 25% of transactions during the peak on the entire network were cat breeding and cat buying. That's fucked
I love it.
And yeah, this poor guy at MetaMask, I remember him being like, my wife is in labor. I don't give a fuck. I don't have time for this. And yet all of Ethereum, and maybe you know how demanding those folks can be.
Sure.
Like, no, fix our problem.
That has not changed. Yeah.
That has not changed.
I love it. So you launched this. You raised $27 million behind it. At that point, were you raising money with the expectation that this was going to be CryptoKitties for life, or were you raising that to build out the EA of the future?
Yeah, we always going through that first experience with the CryptoKitties. It became pretty clear to us pretty quickly that there were 3 opportunities that need to be tackled. So the assumption is that consumer crypto, playful entertainment, blockchain should exist, and we were well positioned to help birth it. But there was 3 real problems. One was you need to have good content. People aren't going to come give a fuck about your decentralization if you don't give them a cool looking carrot.
Right.
So you had to have a good carrot. You had to solve accessibility because MetaMask is awesome and MetaMask works very well now. 5 years ago, it was a new product and there was a lot of room for improvement and iteration and that kind of thing. So accessibility in that sense of the word, like just letting people understand, KYC and Coinbase or whatever you're doing, and then MetaMask, and all the steps. Most of those steps have not been solved. It's still fucking
Right.
hard to get started.
That's a fact.
And then scalability. It was like, oh look, we like with these dumbass cats, and honestly, there wasn't that many people using them or collecting them.
Mm-hmm.
We sort of took down the network, and it was like, okay, so if we're serious about this, like if I go get Beyonce on the blockchain, this shit is over. Like it's over.
Right.
It will never come back. And so that good content, accessibility, and scalability became the three-pronged approach of Dapper, and I think we probably raised money talking about that.
Right.
And that became
everybody
Flow
saw
and Dapper Wallet and Top Shot.
Right, totally. So what about the in-between time, though? I don't want to cut straight to Top Shot because 2018 crypto winter A, I guess, or maybe Z, depending on how long you've been in the market. But crypto winter happens. CryptoKitties at that point it was like, what, 400, 500 daily active users at that point. So it kind of went through a little bit of a cycle. But we know that the story has a happy ending, so nobody feel too bad about it. But what was everybody thinking during 2018?
Don't look at the numbers. Don't look at the numbers. Don't look at the numbers.
That's good.
It sucked. It sucked watching it die slowly and not knowing what to do about it. And there's lots of people who are mad at Dapper, mad at me, mad at CryptoKitties. They have no idea how much we fucking cared. They have no idea how much we would be willing to do. I'd give you my fucking name on my third born. I would chop off my finger and consider left testicle to keep that thing going well. Now, we had enough, what's the expression? Gas in the tank, wind in the sails, that it wasn't an existential threat to us as a business, but just to this product and community that we loved. So we kept trying to innovate and iterate on CryptoKitties, and I don't think we did a particularly good job of that. And we came up with new shit. They were like, Mac, you've got the touch, do a new one. So I was like, oh, do I? Okay, let's try this. And we made Cheese Wizards, which was a fucking failure. And was supposed to be based on Highlander, because that's like my second favorite show.
There we go.
Time. I love Highlander.
Duncan
McLeod. I could go get my Cheese Wizards shirt for you right now and show you. The slogan of Cheese Wizards is there can be only one.
There we go. That's good with the whole non-fungibility angle.
Yes, there was, and there was actually that one didn't work out. And we kept iterating on CryptoKitties and trying to invent games to play around it and stuff, but none of it moved the needle. And so, eventually they were like, go get them basketball people to come do this with us.
Which is shocking that that's the move from things aren't moving to go get a sports league on board, because sports leagues notoriously hard for licensing, protective of their brand. How the hell could anybody go from that to, hey, NBA, let's go do something on a blockchain that others view as confusing and scary?
I can spend some time talking about like how smart and cool we are and why that worked, but I think a lot of credit goes to the NBA. Like, because you're exactly right. Why the fuck would
that's
a
daring.
global top 5 brand go get involved with this high risk, very confusing technology with a tiny user base relative to the imprint, the footprint that they have on the world? Like, it really, there's a woman named Stacy there who was the original point of contact. And I don't know if anybody talks about this, but like, she deserves a fucking medal. I feel like she was a significant part of this story and probably not a part that gets told a lot. But on our side, there was a woman named Katie who we worked with, and Katie was not a nerd. Katie had worked at NFL, NHL, and ESPN. I think she'd worked at those 3 spots. She felt weird at Dapper Labs, or at Actium Zen at the time. She was like, you guys are just fucking nerds. You're all nerds. I'm not a nerd. I'm like, okay, you probably stop saying that because you're offending literally everybody around you. But Katie is cool as shit. Katie, I will take a bullet for. Not in the heart. I got kids. But like, 2 in the arm for sure. And she knows a lot about sports. A lot. And the business of sports. And when CryptoKitties blew up, we had a lot of people reach out to us and talk to us and like want to do things. Everybody wanted to do things. But me and Katie went to New York, and we walked into the NBA's office. We had a deck that was no graphics, just like black fucking Arial font on white backgrounds.
Sure.
And we were like, this is obviously a really good idea, NBA. And me and Katie's dynamic is weird. I'd get really fucking crazy, and then she would, these are her words, not mine, but she would be the business bitch, the basic business bitch. And she would she'd have her lady suit on, and I'd start getting really worked up, and I'd get that way, and then she'd be like, Max, sit down and let me close it. And I'd be like, yes, ma'am. And then, and they needed this. They needed to know that we had visions of the future, and that also we could execute against those visions. And me and Katie did a really good job of communicating that duality. Because, to be clear, it was true. It worked out.
Oh, yeah. Well, it became a multi-billion-dollar line of business for them in a market that when it launched was not a market. I mean, it was a market for crypto. And there was, I don't want to say that there was no blockchain collectibles in between. I know what Lucid Sight was doing some interesting games. There was people doing some interesting things.
There was the baseball thing. There was these bobblehead and MLB things.
There was some cool stuff, but nothing to the scale and explosive popularity of an NBA Top Shot. So,
yep. But to your point, we tell these stories of the air quotes winners, but that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of bodies of fucking heroes in the field as well. There's many interesting people doing much interesting work that just didn't have the same, series of lucky connections that we did, and so we're telling our story, not theirs. But that is not to detract from their story.
Oh, yeah, I remember in 2019, there was a Star Trek game. Any Star Trek game that comes out, I'll give it a try, that was minting ships on a blockchain. And I'm like, this is really cool. And a buddy of mine worked there, and I minted a ship, and just nobody was on it, so I stopped playing. But it's prescient, because back now I see Recur is essentially doing the same thing 3 years later, and I'm like, wow, they were onto something.
Crazy. In the same way that the NBA was crazy, why the fuck was Viacom doing that? God bless them. I love Star Trek. I will fight for hours about nuance of Star Trek.
Sure.
But I was shocked that they were doing that, and because they aren't I really, really like Skybound. Skybound is a comic and entertainment company. They make a thing called Walking Dead. And they will let anybody have a run at Walking Dead. They always have. It's just it's part of how they do it, and it's working very well for them. But Star Trek is not that. Star Trek is precious about their shit.
That's a 65-year history, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my god, I hadn't thought of it that way, but yeah. And so that is surprising that they were doing that work. Also, loosely they were too early, or it wasn't quite good enough, or whatever, because we're talking about Top Shot, not about Star Trek right now.
Exactly. But then, of course, Top Shot blew up, and then everybody entered the business. VC funding galore. Everybody's got their own chain, but you guys launch Flow. Or Flow was kind of there. Was Flow developed and then Top Shot on top of that? What was the order of operations there?
I think we always knew that Top Shot had to be built on Flow.
Right.
Because of that scalability problem. And there are other ways to solve scalability. People who are blockchain enthusiasts would come here and argue with me about side chains and L2 chains and fucking Solana and all these things. And I wouldn't argue with them. I'm not informed enough to say so. I would say that layer 1 Ethereum was absolutely not going to be the answer. Right. And then people smarter than I decided that Flow would be the answer. And I wasn't able to have an opinion that mattered on that.
Well, now you have since left and you're out on your own. Can you, especially, I mean, God, it feels like you're touching a lot of projects. You were part of Stoner Cats, right? And that was another explosive game. Yep. Now everyone in Hollywood talks about Stoner Cats in terms of funding. So where did that come about? How'd you get involved?
I was putting together a small round for Bighead. I don't always tell the story this way, but it's true. I was putting together a small round for Bighead, and I said, it was closed, we had all the money we needed, and I looked around the table, and I was like, man, every one of you has a dick. You are all penis motherfuckers. And the thing that, straight middle-aged white men with undue privilege and technology are supposed to do is extend the privilege. This is that moment. It is exactly at this moment that I'm supposed to stop, look around, and be like, hold on. And so I talked to all my investors and I was like, hey, I want you to think of women in your network who would add a ton of value as investors who I should talk to.
Mhm.
And so some of them did. There's a guy named Kelvin Beecham who's a fucking goat. That guy has done more for me than almost anybody else.
Mhm.
And he introduced me to a bunch of really interesting women. And one of them was named Maria, who works at Sound. And
Mhm.
Maria is friends with Mila. So me and Maria ended up becoming very good friends. She's like, she's good.
Mhm.
And but while we were talking and hanging out and stuff, she kept being like, Mila is gonna make stoner cats, and we're really excited about figuring out how NFTs could be leveraged to make stoner cats matter. And they had all these ideas, and I kept being like, no, 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 don't do that. That's a bad idea. This is a bad idea. And then eventually Mario was like, God, I'm sick of being the middle woman. Come meet Mila, and like, let's figure out if we can do this. Met Mila and was like, wow, you actually care about this shit, and you're pretty like good at this, and you're smart, and it would be an honor to work with you. And so we signed up, and then we made the Stoner Cats NFTs.
That's fantastic. And tell me a little bit about now you're at Bighead Club. I imagine with an evolution like Scrappy startup becomes CryptoKitties, take a ride, grows astronomically. It's always hard to leave a company once it's grown that astronomically, but now you're back at Bighead Club. What was the vision there? What did you think that you can get done there that you couldn't get done when you were over at Dapper?
In between the two, I made games. I just left
There
Dapper
you
to
go.
go make games again, and then while I was
Got it.
making games, I was like, fuck it, let's go. I called a friend of mine who I check in with semi regularly, and I was like, we are just talking. His name is John Howard, and he said, Mac, I want to spend this year using my engineering skills to help artists have a wild ride in Web3. I want to change artists' lives using this
Mhm.
blockchain technology. And I was like, oh, that sounds cool. I'm gonna do the same thing, but my first artist is this Grammy Award winning rapper that I'm actually gonna make an NFT with. And we never made that NFT, which is very good. That would have been a bad idea in hindsight.
Mhm.
But I told him that, and he's like, oh, like we're doing the same thing. We have a different set of skills. You have the craziest network of anybody I've ever met, and I can actually make things happen. So why don't we team up? And I was like, John Howard, I would be fucking honored. But before that happened, actually, my sister-in-law, who's always been interested in my professional rodeo,
Mhm.
uh, fucking circus, whatever you want to call this, when she heard I was starting Big Head, she sent me an email and she's like, dude, like, you're not doing this one alone. I'm fucking coming. Just figure out how to make room for me because I want to be a part of this. And so me and Christy and John got this business going. And then we did the Stoner Cats NFT and we staffed up a little bit. And now there's 10 of us and we're making strange and marvelous NFTs that stand the test of time.
I love that. I love to hear it, especially taking it from a creative angle. You shockingly don't hear that as much, right? So much stuff in blockchain feels like taken from a business opportunity standpoint, right? We're going to be the premier destination for blank, 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 and a blank, 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 right? But somebody's saying, we're just creative people. We're going to do cool stuff. That's rare, which is weird thinking of where this all began, which is like these renegade pirate, like, I'm outside the blockchain, for God's sakes, was started by somebody who was essentially trying to take down traditional economic systems. So it's the Genesis block, right? So do you
Yeah.
think that that's what's going to be your secret sauce here? Is you're focused on cool experiences for people rather than verticals?
The thing that we are trying to use as a North Star is to always advance the medium. We would like
Mm-hmm.
to, in everything that we do something that has not been done before and make sure that the methods by which we did that are available to everybody else. That seems like the really big, interesting way that we can move forward in this space. We're not going to be able to afford to be absolutely militant about that. It's not life or death on every single one, but our guiding principle is this idea that like we should do shit that has not been done before.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, like CryptoKitties was truly, I want to make a game about fucking cats. And
Mm-hmm.
then, because of the brilliance of Dieter and others, we created a standard that other people could build against. You don't get
Right.
to just be weird and leave it at weird and be like, okay, yeah, no, that's a great idea. But you can find the edges with weird. And then if you can standardize the right edge, that's the massive opportunity. So we're going to go keep playing and poking and kicking and having hypotheses and experimenting and testing against those hypotheses. And when we find things that are worth standardizing, I look forward to doing that again, because I think that is an immense opportunity.
That's awesome. Well, it feels like a good place to leave it. We actually burned through our half hour. It's been such a fascinating talk. What do you want to tease? Is there anything coming up people should look out for?
One of the boring things about NFTs is how much time people spend insularly just like fucking with their own community and not others. That's one of our observations. And so we are making a way for NFT communities to play together. That is called Boat Game. That is coming soon. Not now, but soon. So look out for Boat Game. Go get yourself an Oni Ronin, OniRonin.io. I swear to God, they're the best NFTs around and nobody knows it. And besides that, be nice to each other.
I love that. Thank you so much, Mac. Appreciate hearing your story.
Have a great one.
This episode of NFT Stories Podcast is hosted and produced by me, Phil Ranta. Theme music is by Mike Constantini, and we're made possible by our friends at We Are Verified. This episode has now officially been minted. See you at the next drop. This episode of the NFT Stories Podcast is supported by We Are Verified, a leading digital creator management and creator services company. If you're looking for help on your next influencer marketing campaign, or if you're a creator looking for help on your business, or if you need a creator service like building an NFT campaign, recording your podcast, or optimizing your subscription platform community through Brand Army or OnlyFans, reach out to them at wave.la. That's WAV.LA. Please note, I do work directly with We Are Verified as an advisor, but that's one of the reasons I know they're so dang good.